All right, guys. So I do my best to cover things or at least investigate both sides when it comes to politics. And as you can easily find on my channel, I deconstruct the left narrative as well. However, I want to point one thing out because it gets brought up quite a bit. Many people engage in the middle ground fallacy here. They believe that both sides are like equally bullshit or something. And that is absolutely fallacious. That's just not true. It's demonstrably not true. So, what people expect with this fallacy and this way of thinking is that if you, quote, cover both sides, you're going to call out lies and bullshit on both equally. Now, that's absolutely retarded because both sides don't lie equally. It doesn't take a whole lot of brain power to follow what I'm saying here. So, additionally, I don't censor anyone. YouTube sometimes does, and usually for good reason, but I censor nothing. If you believe that you have evidence of the left spouting a bunch of bullshit or whatever, post it. I will investigate it, and then if it's true, then I will call it myself as well. Like it's really simple. But anyhow, moving on here. Jesus Christ. All right. So I've been told by a few people that I should look into Glenn Beck. He's not your typical right winger, and he doesn't lie as much as, say, Fox News. Yeah. So I decided I would do a little digging and see if any of that's true. So I won't just spoil everything here. I have watched at least a good part of this video already because otherwise I can't actually fact check anything. So yeah, I'll just kind of deal with it as I go, I guess. So let's go ahead and jump in here.
We are 4 years ago, the events of January 6, 2021, the darkest day in all of the Republic. Well, what we thought was true is quickly unraveling now. For many Americans, this day is a dividing line. The narratives have clashed. Emotions have run high. Our trust in institutions sworn to protect us has been further eroded in ways that only dramatic action will we ever be able to regain a portion of our trust. Now, there are newly emerging details. They're not just revelations. They are bombshells that force us to confront an uncomfortable truth about our government. And that should be the message of January 6th. And that...
The average person sees hundreds of online ads daily. Here's how a man's life would change if he used...
Message, the truth about our government, its accountability, and the lengths that it will go to preserve its version of a story, even when it is all a lie.
Whole lot of lead up to that one. So what I've noticed, and by the way, the left does this as well, he has put in quite a decent amount of build-up through the beginning to get people emotionally latched. But anyhow, let's continue.
Beginning on January 6th in the afternoon, Americans were told of an imminent threat. 2 pipe bombs were found near the RNC and the DNC headquarters. These devices, if you remember, we were told, could have caused catastrophic harm. After all, at the DNC, the vice president had been rushed to the DNC, strangely and without explanation, and also strangely, all records were lost. The Secret Service accidentally deleted all of those records on why she was moved to the DNC. Now we know the investigation into these bombs was woefully insufficient, and I'm being kind with that. I don't think it really even happened at all. Surveillance footage was ignored. Cameras were turned just hours before the pipe bomb was laid. Cell phone data in both places we were told was corrupted. The only thing that was corrupted was our own government and FBI. We now know that the data was not corrupted. According to the cell phone companies, they were never asked to turn over the information to the FBI. They were never asked. Critical leads went unpursued. Today, 4 years later, questions about the bomber's identity still remain unanswered. The lack of urgency begs the question, why? Why would federal agencies neglect a critical investigation in something that was going to destroy the republic, could have killed the vice president? What if the pipe bombs were nothing more than a convenient distraction? Boy.
Now we're jumping into conspiracy theory territory, and this is what the right is known for, and they typically have absolutely no evidence to back it up. So he has used sort of a logical form of evidence here to kind of convince you. So, okay, let's do some fact checking here. So the FBI did not receive, quote, corrupted data from one of the major cell carriers in connection with its investigation into the pipe bomber. A former senior FBI official testified that the major cell carrier companies provided, quote, corrupted cell data to the FBI and suggested that the corrupted data may have contained the identity of the pipe bomber. However, in responses to letters from the subcommittee, the major cell carriers confirmed that they did not provide corrupted data to the FBI and that the FBI never notified them of any issues with accessing the cellular data. So Glenn Beck is lying here. He's pushed this narrative that they were not even asked for the data, and that's not true. So they were asked for the data. They simply claimed that it was not corrupted. So at this point, it's just he said, she said. We have no evidence one way or another. We just have the words of one group and the words of the other. So, yeah, but let's continue.
A justification to escalate security measures and cast a broader shadow over what they hoped would unfold that day. It's not conspiratorial to ask those questions. It is our duty as citizens.
No, it's conspiratorial to push this narrative that it's likely to be some sort of inside job, which is what you're doing. That is conspiratorial. So you're, this is hilarious. Let's continue.
Because we now know our government lied. So
no, we don't. We now know that you just lied. Let's see if you have any other lies that you claim anyway.
We want answers. We know that 26 FBI informants were on the ground that day, but they didn't go into the Capitol. Now let that sink in. It's not speculation. It's fact. 26 FBI informants. What were they doing there? Were they infiltrating the crowd? Were they guiding its behavior? Were they acting as provocateurs? Why, if the FBI had 26 informants, why did this happen at all? The presence raises troubling concerns about how much of January 6th was actually organic and how much was orchestrated. 4 years ago today, I was tweeting, this has got to stop. This isn't who we are. All of these people should go to jail. Well, today, I still say, if you broke the windows and you were clad in a mask and you were causing damage and, hurting people, yeah, you should go to jail. But the time you should have served is, up by now. But there's still people in jail, maybe for as long as 20 years. It looks like this was all crafted not to protect democracy, but to bolster an agenda. Amid the chaos, everybody pointing their finger to one man, Donald J. Trump. But the new information paints a vastly different picture.
All right, before we go further, I need to address the FBI claim, and he's trying to covertly push this other right-wing conspiracy theory that the FBI somehow caused or pushed or inflamed people to riot, which there's absolutely no evidence for, but let's dig in here. A Justice Department watchdog found that there were no undercover FBI employees at the U.S. Capitol during the January 6, 2021 riot, rejecting speculation from allies of President-elect Donald Trump, who have for years suggested that the violence that day was provoked by federal agents. The DOJ Inspector General said Thursday that while no undercover agents were at the rally, 26 confidential human sources or paid FBI informants were in Washington that day, none of whom were authorized to break the law themselves or encourage others to do so. So notice how they use vagueness of language here to try to paint a completely different picture. It's funny because he's talking about other people trying to paint a narrative. That's what Glenn Beck is doing. He's trying to make you think that the FBI was in on this, and they weren't FBI agents. The findings are part of a long-awaited report into the FBI's preparations before the 2021 attack from Trump supporters trying to stop the confirmation of Joe Biden's presidential election victory. Hold on, let me dig a little further here. I started before the point where I wanted to, actually. Anyway, GOP lawmakers, Trump allies, and some facing criminal charges because of their alleged actions that day have claimed that law enforcement officials bungled their intelligence sharing or even used paid informants to rile up an otherwise peaceful rally to purposefully create the violent insurrection. Of the 26 informants who were in Washington, D.C. that day, 3 had specifically been tasked by the FBI to report on specific domestic terrorism case subjects who may be going to the rallies on January 6th, the report says. One of those informants entered the Capitol itself, while the other 2 remained outside on the grounds. Now, the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, I believe, were the organizations that those informants were watching. And there's nothing crazy about that. There's nothing conspiratorial about that. They're fucking terrorist organizations. Okay. The other 23 went to Washington on their own and were not tasked to do so by the FBI, the IG report states. Of those 23, 3 informants entered the Capitol during the riot, and an additional 11 entered the grounds. The remaining 9 informants who attended events on January 6 did not break the law. Some of those sources also sent in information about the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, and concerns for the safety of members of Congress on January 6, the IG found. This information was no more specific than and was consistent with other sources of information that the FBI and its Washington field office had received about the potential for violence on January 6th, including from other sources of tips the FBI received and from social media. No informants have been criminally charged, the Inspector General said. Republicans on Capitol Hill have repeatedly clashed with top officials at the Justice Department and FBI over the riot, most notably over suggestions that FBI informants helped instigate the attack. Some lawmakers, like Louisiana Rep. Clay Higgins, have pushed unfounded theories that federal agents pretending to be Trump supporters tricked people into carrying out mob violence. Higgins once suggested that ghost buses took provocateurs to the Washington. Other Republicans, like Kentucky Representative Thomas Massey, have specifically asked the Inspector General to include information about how paid informants were used during the riot. The FBI has not denied that confidential human sources were present at the Capitol that day, and some have even publicly testified at riot-related criminal trials. But FBI Director Christopher Wray has flatly rejected the claim that the Bureau orchestrated the violence. If you're asking whether the violence at the Capitol on January 6 was part of some operation orchestrated by FBI sources and/or agents, the answer is emphatically no. Wray told members of Congress last November, this is not violence orchestrated by FBI sources or agents. And apparently 25% of Americans believe that it was probably or definitely true that the FBI instigated the riot, which shows the lack of intelligence of the American people in general. Luckily, it's 25%. That's not too massive, but even that is too high. This is people who aren't capable of using critical thinking. And this is Glenn Beck. He seems to be, I've never encountered him before. He seems to be, he is astute. He seems to speak well. Seems to be a reasonably intelligent person, so my guess is he's purposefully lying. But let's continue.
2 days before January 6th, it has now been verified that Trump authorized the deployment of the National Guard, citing concerns over a potential unrest at the Capitol on January 6th. But his concerns were ignored. His offer was rebuffed by Nancy Pelosi and the Capitol Police. Why? Who in the chain of command chose to disregard this presidential directive? The presence of the National Guard would have prevented much of the mayhem that occurred, maybe even all of it. Yet that opportunity was squandered, and no one told us about it. In fact, the media told us that Trump wanted the chaos. The truth is, we now know he sought to prevent it. This glaring omission from mainstream narratives exposes just how much the January 6th story has been manipulated to fit a preconceived conclusion.
Hi, I'm JT, and I made Result
Jesus
Hunter, the
Christ,
search
another
engine
one?
for conservatives. Let me just tell you what it does. First of all, big tech right now is run by a bunch of...
I like how just because I'm watching a Glenn Beck video, they're fucking tailoring fucking conservative ads to me.
There was the Ashley Babbitt story, a name who's become a rallying cry for those who see January 6th as a miscarriage of justice. She was a decorated Air Force veteran. She was shot and...
Before we continue, I've got to address this last one. Former president, this is AJC Politics, and this is from the Associated Press. Former President Donald Trump falsely claimed that then House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, quote, turned down his offer to send 10,000 soldiers or the National Guard to the Capitol during the January 6th insurrection. Pelosi does not direct the National Guard. Further, as the Capitol came under attack, she and the then Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell called for military assistance, including from the National Guard. The Capitol Police Board decides on whether to call National Guard troops to the Capitol. It is made up of the House Sergeant at Arms, the Senate Sergeant at Arms, and the architect of the Capitol. The board decided not to call the Guard ahead of the insurrection, but did eventually request assistance after the rioting had already begun and the troops arrived several hours later. There is no evidence that either Pelosi or McConnell directed the security officials not to call the Guard beforehand. So, surprise, surprise, Donald Trump is a lying piece of shit. And I would assume that frickin' Glenn Beck here knows that as well, and he's purposefully trying to mislead people because, as is typical of the right, and this isn't biased. They are mainly lying pieces of shit. That's not, again, let's not get into the middle ground fallacy here. People do not lie equally. Both sides are not the same. That's stupid. Let's continue.
And killed on live TV by a Capitol police officer while attempting to climb through a broken window. Her death was ruled justified almost immediately. But now we learn that the officer involved violated multiple procedural rules.
Procedural rules. All right. So there's a woman, he's painting her as if she's like this helpless victim. Like almost like the cop like went out of his way to target her when she was doing nothing wrong. She was part of a fucking insurrection. There was chaos everywhere. There were police officers that were being attacked by this violent fucking mob. This isn't shit that I'm making up. These are facts. These are actual facts, unlike what Glenn Beck here is trying to push for.
Officer, long shielded from scrutiny, held up as a hero, is now under investigation for misconduct so severe that it could lead to criminal charges. Think about that. A life was taken. The person responsible may not have followed any of the protocols. What else was cut because of security? What else was?
More than likely, the person, now it's true that the shot was fired, blah, 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 but you're in a tense situation where there are multiple people trying to illegally breach the fucking building. Personally, I don't have any problem with what he did. Secondly, she's not a victim. She shouldn't have been there. So he's pushing this whole fucking narrative that she's like some victim, which is absolutely not true. If anything, all of the police officers were the victims. And as we saw, Trump tried to push the narrative that they were, quote, patriots, which is the opposite of what they were. Insurrectionists are not patriots. They're quite literally the opposite. They're trying to fucking disrupt the peaceful transfer of power. This is hilarious.
Was held up as an example of good police work. And why was Babbitt's death so quickly dismissed by the media and the government officials? In the days of George Floyd, why was this one policeman, his actions?
More than likely, the reason why the guy his job's on the line is because what Trump has done, like, insane this entire time since he got his power back. He even started before. He's trying to go out and attack anyone who had anything to do with going against him, even in the past. So just because someone's job is on the line does not mean that they did anything wrong. These are most likely, pun intended, trumped up charges. But anyhow, that's just my take on it.
It's not scrutinized. Did her life not matter? Her story was buried under a mountain of political narratives. And most importantly, January 6th is all about the perversion of justice, the using of allies in social media, high-tech global corporations, including telecom and airlines, in many cases offering up location data on people that were simply in Washington, D.C. without being asked. What the FBI did with it, how perverted the court system is in D.C. alone, the knowing role of our politicians, local and federal, our police, the higher-ups with the National Guard, as well as at the Pentagon now. What do these things tell us about our country? Well, they tell us that our country, as we hope it would be, is dead, that we have been lied to. They mean that the events of January 6th are far more complex than the tidy little story that they had by 6 p.m. that night.
So far, we're showing that the American people are being lied to by you, Glenda Beck. Why is that?
They mean that the very institutions designed to uphold justice and democracy may have played a role in undermining them. And let's not just blame one side. January 6th wasn't about Trump supporters or Democrats in the media. It was about a system that thrives on division and chaos.
That is hilarious. And yeah, this is part of, well, a lot of people make this mistake, but this is why I brought up the middle ground fallacy, which is what he's trying to push right now. And I think he's smart enough to know that he's doing that. He's hoping that his base or people watching are too stupid to understand. So let me go back a moment. Just had a brain fucking hiccup.
One side. January 6th wasn't about Trump supporters or Democrats in the media. It was about a system that thrives on division and chaos.
Oh, yeah, yeah. Like, the moment you make a case that a system thrives on division and chaos to protect or to try to defend Donald J. Trump, you have no argument. That is the most hilarious thing I've ever fucking heard. Donald J. Trump is the most chaotic and divisive character in U.S. politics for any time since I've been alive, at least, or anything I know about politics. No one even comes close. Like, you're projecting here, dude.
A system that uses fear to control us. If federal agencies can lie, manipulate, and withhold the truth about January 6th, what are they not capable?
Projecting, dude. Jesus Christ. You haven't shown one shred of evidence that they've done any such thing. All you've done is fucking try to cleverly word shit to push fucking conspiracy theories, which right-wingers do all the time, and their fucking retarded base fall for it. Hook, line, and sinker. And it's really sad.
Of doing. What are they willing to do to maintain their grip on power? We, the American people, 4 years later on January 6th, must demand the truth. We don't just deserve it, we demand it. Not the sanitized version, not the...
Sure. The truth of the matter is Donald J. Trump incited a fucking insurrection because he's a narcissist and couldn't handle the fact that he lost. And put up numerous fucking lawsuits, of which he lost every single one because he had absolutely no evidence for all the crazy shit that he claimed. And the people were fairly treated, considering the gravity of their crime. They were placed in prison, many of them for violent acts, and Donald J. Trump pardoned them. And at least 3 of them so far have either been locked up and one was shot in the head because he's a fucking violent criminal. These are the people that you're trying to protect, Glenn Beck. You are a fucking idiot, and you're probably evil.
The politically convenient version, not the story that makes the Democrats look bad alone, but tells us the truth, the entire truth. That means demanding accountability from the FBI, the Capitol Police, every government official on either side who had a hand in what happened that day or covering it up. It means refusing to let the deaths, the lies, the unanswered questions fade into a history of political footnotes. It seems that January 6th, now 4 years later, we can say was not the end of democracy, but it may have been the beginning of the end for our blind trust in all of our institutions that we now know have failed us time and time again. The truth will set you free. We were preserved, I believe. God's not done with us. That was a miracle that Donald Trump was elected.
Oh my Jesus. Now he's trying to fucking appeal to people's fucking religiosity. How pathetic. And again, you can't call yourself a Christian if you support Donald Trump. Trump is literally the antithesis of Christian values. He is the opposite of Jesus Christ. Like, it's so weird that people have gotten this so twisted.
It was a miracle that he lived to see the election. God did what we could not do. Now he is demanding that we do our part. And that is to ensure lies and corruption are not buried.
Well, don't believe in the God part, but at least I am here to expose your lies and corruption, Glenn Beck. What a piece of shit. Like, can't you just be fucking honest? And I'm sure there's many other people that are doing the same thing, exposing you for the fraud that you are.
But that we demand equal justice. I don't care who you are, where you work, what label you have.
Yes, you do. You're painting a fucking one-sided story, and then toward the end, you're trying to use mental gymnastics and like try to fool people by acting like this is not basically partisan. Like this is about the truth. Yet you lied multiple times, and I fucking called you out on all of them. What a piece of shit.
What party you belong to. This must end.
Well, it's a one day before the time that I was going to take away for any Trump shit, but I'm feeling a lot better now. And this isn't directly, I mean, it does involve Trump. It's really hard to stay off of him because he's so dangerous and psychotic and fucking evil. But anyway, this is at least slightly off. It's more about January the 6th than anything. And in this case, Glenn Beck's lies involving it. Yeah, feel free to chime in with whatever you would like. You think I made a mistake, you disagree with me, you agree with me, whatever. This, everyone, is what a partisan hack looks like. Thank you for your time.